डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी.
Hello friends, Namaskar. This is Dr. Jaini Shah, Assistant Professor of English from Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University. I welcome you all friends to this video lecture series that the university is recording for its new and indigenous syllabus of all the degree programs. And this particular lecture is from new syllabus, new course of third year Bachelor of Arts in English, and this is paper number 7, which is entitled Study of Poetry. So in this paper, different poetry are to be studied, and the form of poetry will be also discussed with you. Today I have come over here with a particular unit which deals with Matthew Arnold's poetry, that is entitled Dover Beach. So here are the components that we are going to deal with in this particular session. We will have a little bit of information about the author, that is Matthew Arnold, to which genre he belonged to and what kind of works he wrote. Then we will come to lyric form, which is Dover Beach. The form of the poem is a lyric. We have different forms such as song, lyric, ballad, ode, etc. We will come to the analysis of the poem and we will end it up with the conclusion and some of the questions for the better understanding of the poem, and I will give you further references for further study. So beginning with Matthew Arnold, on the right hand side you can see the image of Matthew Arnold himself. He was born in the year 1822 and he died in the year 1888. He was an English poet and cultural critic. He was born in Britain, and he wrote his major works were produced during Victorian period, and he is recognized to be the third most famous Victorian poet, only after Browning and Tennyson. Arnold was elected as Professor of Poetry at Oxford University in the year 1857. So from this you can gauge the merit of the writer Matthew Arnold. He was often regarded as sage writer. Who is a sage writer? Sage is a person who delineates wisdom, who chastises society by instructing and educating the people regarding the contemporary social issues. So this was the major work portion, how he came to be recognized as a sage writer and how he wrote his works. He was equally regarded as a poet as well as a poetry critic also. Some of his famous poems are Dover Beach, that the one which we are going to study, The Scholar Gypsy, Thyrsis, and essays like Culture and Anarchy, Literature and Dogma. And his poetries were about literary, social as well as religious criticism. So he was a different kind of writer who not only wrote poetry but he wrote criticism on poetry, which is a very rare combination in a writer to have. And he also wrote essays which were commentaries on society, on the changing thought, awakening of the society. Victorian period was a period of transformation from faith to modernization. So that is what he focused on and he wrote in his poetry, as well as that was the subject in his poetry, as well as in his poetry criticism, as well as in his essays and other works. Moving further, coming to Arnold's writings. As I said, he was a major Victorian poet and most of his works were published during this era, 1837 to 1901. This is the Victorian period, and in this period, his works were widely read and widely criticized and widely discussed upon. They were critical to the time that Victorian period is all about, from 1837 to 1901. Matthew Arnold is unique in that his reputation rests equally upon his poetry and his poetry criticism. So, in both the genres, writing poetry, that is creative activity, as well as scholarly activity, activity which involves a lot of thought and fundamentalism. So, over there also, he is well reputed as a critic. Many of the same values, attitudes, and feelings that are expressed in his poems creatively, they achieve a fuller and more balanced opinions or formulations in his essays or in his poetry criticism. So his subject matter remained more or less the same, but the style of conveying his ideas changed from poetry to essays and criticism. Now, some of his poems are entitled as Growing Old. From the title itself, you can imagine what kind of subject matter he would be dealing with in these poems. Growing old, immortality, the buried life, the future, so on and so forth. And some of the examples of his criticism are preface to the poems and study of poetry. So, here is the writer who writes poetry and who criticizes poetry at the same point of time in his different works. Now, coming to lyric form. Today we are going to study Matthew Arnold's poetry that is entitled Dower Bitch. But this poem, Dower Bitch, is it is written in a lyric form. Now, what is lyric poetry? Lyric poetry is a formal type of poetry which expresses personal emotions or personal feelings, typically spoken in the first person. Now, lyric form is different from ballad. Ballad is a long poem, typically written in the format of a song. You can sing the ballads, and they often depict romance and love. That is ballad. We have another form of poetry which is called ode, O-D-E, ode. Ode is often a poem which is like paying homage or paying tribute to the one who is dead. So the tone is melancholy, sadness is there in the poem. That is elegy. So we have ode and we have ballad, which is a long poem which can be sung also. The rhyme and the meter are such that the poem can be sung, and the subject matter of ballad is often love and romance, whereas the totally opposite form to that is elegy. Elegy is mostly a poem depicting sadness and melancholy for the one who has passed away. It pays homage, it pays tribute to the dead. That is elegy. But here we are dealing with another form of poetry, which is lyric. Now, the word lyric comes from ancient Greek literature. That is the lyric, which was defined by its musical accompaniment, usually on a stringed instrument known as a lyre. So from the instrument lyre comes the word lyric, and that is the poetry, the form of the poetry that Arnold has written. Much lyric poetry depends on regular meter based either on number of syllables or on stress. Now, the different meters of lyric are iambic, trochaic, phairic, anapestic, dactylic, and spondaic. Now, this comes in the detailed version of scansion of the poem, but here I have taken the analysis, the subject matter or the theme which the poem deals with. So, not going further into the scansion part, moving further. Coming to the poem itself, Dower Bitch. a lyric poem. It was published in the year 1867 in the collection entitled New Poems. The title and locale of the poem's descriptive opening lines. So the title itself says that it's about a beach. Which beach? Dover Beach. The beach is called Dover. It is situated in Kent. It is a English channel which is between England and France. So descriptive opening lines is the shore of the English port of Dover in Kent facing Calais in France. So it is between England and France, and it is famously known as English Channel. That portion which comes between two lands, that is England and France, is called English Channel, and the narrowest part of that English Channel is called Dover Beach, where it is said that Arnold, after getting married, had gone to his honeymoon in the year 1851 at Dover Beach. Many of the beaches in this part of England are made up of small stones or pebbles rather than sand. Now, when you imagine, when the word beach comes in front of you, you imagine a sea and sand, right, on the bank of the sea. But in this part of the England, rather Dover, beaches are made up of small stones or pebbles rather than sand, and that is the peculiarity of this location, and Arnold utilizes this setting to be a central theme of his poem, and from there he takes up a philosophical view, a view on the changing society and how it all happens in the poetry. Let us just have a look. Before I move to the analysis, I have a few two images for you. Here is the map. As you can see over here, the red balloon is Dover. It is situated between London. Sorry. It is situated between London and Paris, that is France. And this narrow portion is the English Channel, and here is the beach, Dover Beach. So this is Dover in map, the actual location where Arnold visited and wrote this poem. Here is the beach itself. As you can see, it is made up of small stones and pebbles rather than the sand, and the vast sea, and here are the English cliffs, a mountain-like structure, which is again very famous in this area of Dover. So having this location in mind will help you better understand and better appreciate the poetry that Arnold has written. Coming to the poem Dover Beach, this is what the poem is. I'm not going to read the whole poem because it's in front of you. You can always use other resources and read the poem. Not many difficult words are used, easy to understand. But here I will convey the idea, the central analysis, what the poem deals with. Okay, this is what the poem is. You can read it later on. As you can see, it is divided into 4 stanzas, and now we are dealing the stanzas one by one. The first stanza, the setting is of a night. The scene opens in the night. The calm and quiet sea is filled with water at the time of high tide. Now, there is a time of high tide in the sea. The scene is of night, and the calm and quiet sea is filled with water because the moon is shining brightly upon the narrow English Channel. So it is self-explanatory that it is the time of tide, and that's why the moon is shining brightly. The sea is calm and quiet, and the scene is of night. The speaker, though the poem is written by Arnold, here in the poem we will describe him as a speaker or a narrator of the poem. So the speaker is staring at the French coast. He is standing on the England portion. He is staring away at the French coast, which is some 20 miles away on the other side of the channel. Then he concentrates on the English shore. The famous cliffs of Dover stand tall with their large wavering reflections in the quiet sea. Again, coming to the image, somewhere here, Arnold is standing, he is viewing the other side of the coast, and he notices the reflection of the cliffs in the water. Okay, moving further, first stanza continues. The speaker asks his mistress to come to the window to enjoy the sweet night air coming from the sea. Now, up to this lines, up to this scene, you can imagine a very cheerful, joyful, happy picture of a man who is standing at the beach. He is viewing the sun. He is viewing the moon. He is noticing the reflection of mountains in the sea. He is gazing at the other side of the coast, and he also calls his mistress to the window to enjoy the sweet night air that is coming from the sea. But from here, the tone of the poem changes from joyful to a little bit sad tone. How it does? He now asks her to listen to the continuous and irritating sound of the pebbles drawn by the waves. So you now need to imagine the kind of sound that originates when the water hits the pebbles. Every time when the wave comes to the bank, that's the irritating sound that is generated with a lot of pebbles being hit by the water, because the beach is made up of stones and pebbles rather than the sand, and that continuous sound is irritating to the speaker, and the trembling rhythm continues slowly, but now it brings the eternal note of sadness. The monotonous rhythm of the waves makes the speaker depressed. The sound somehow does not appeal to the speaker. It brings sadness to his mind, and he continues to think of something else. The tone of the poem now changes from cheerful to melancholy to sad. Second stanza, the speaker is now reminded of Sophocles, Greek philosopher, that Sophocles also heard the same sound sitting on the shore of the Aegean Sea, somewhere in Greece. That brought to Sophocles' mind the picture of human sufferings like muddy water going in and out. So here is an imagery where Arnold is recollecting Sophocles and his phenomenon, his event, that when he sat on the shore of sea with muddy water going in and out, he remembered human sufferings. He related this picture to the sadness and to human sufferings, endless sufferings of helpless humankind. So similarly, this picture of water hitting the pebbles and generating irritating sound brings sadness to Arnold's mind. Narrator has also found a feeling of sadness hearing similar sound beside the English Channel, beside the Northern Sea. Third stanza, it talks about human faith, that is, religious faith and faith in fellow people once covered the earth like sea water. So here he talks about the earlier period where faith, that is religious faith, religious doctrines, belief in religion, belief in fraternity, brotherhood, humankind, was once, it covered humanity like water covers the earth. And on the globe of the earth, major part is water. So here is the comparison that once people had faith in religion, once people had faith in each other, like water covers the earth. But now what happens, that we have to see. So the comparison suggests that it was not loose but tightly attached to this world. Like the major part of the earth is water, similarly humankind, the majority of human beings had faiths in their hearts. It was the time when faith made everything easy and solved many problems. It was the time that people believed that there is God and He will bring justice to their endless sufferings. And that was the time when everything was easy and it was easy to solve many problems, because faith united people and brought meanings to their lives. So they were guided by the religion, they had purpose in their lives, they searched for meanings in their lives, and it made a lot of their problems solve very quickly. But alas, he regrets that those days are past. Now the scenario is different. Faith is fading away from the society, just like the wave is from the shore. Wave is coming to the shore and it is going back. So faith is also now receding. Not many people believe in religious faith. The poet here creates a fearful picture of the underlying nakedness of the colorful modern world. So he comments over here that the modernization, industrial development, and the future of world is colorful, is full of variety, but it is hollow from inside. It is naked from inside, because there is no faith in the hearts of the people, and the loss of faith brings many existential problems. So that is what he has foreseen in his time in the 19th century. And this idea comes up when he is standing on the shore viewing the views and the irritating sound that the waves bring with them. Now the last and the final stanza, the fourth stanza, the desolate speaker now again turns to his beloved and urges her to be faithful to each other. The dreamy modern world, which seems so beautiful with its varieties, is not really a source of joy, is not really a source of love, light, certainty, and peace. This chaotic, artificial world doesn't induce much hope for him. So, with industrial development, with modernization, a lot of varieties of techniques and tools and reason and science have progressed, have made material lives easier of people. But the poet is certain that all this materialism is not going to bring happiness, light, love, certainty, and peace of mind in people's life, because that can only come with a faith in religion, with a faith in God, which is receding, which is slowly diminishing from the society. So in this chaotic, messy picture of the society, he urges that I don't trust the humankind, but at least I trust you, his beloved, his wife, that you, in this difficult times, you remain faithful to me, and we will remain faithful to each other, because the world outside is not is losing faith, in one sentence if we can sum up. Now the speaker compares this world to a dark place where we are completely unaware of what we are doing. That is, we all are in a race to reach somewhere, but we don't know what the destination is going to bring in our lives. So it's a dark place. where we are completely unaware of our actions. We are in a confused struggle, as if ignorant soldiers are fighting with each other in the darkness without knowing the purpose of fighting with each other. So, it's a very deep imagery that the whole world is a dark place and people are running behind shallow goals. We are unaware of our actions, because the actions are not grounded, they do not come from any ideology or any faith. And he has compared this to ignorant soldiers. Imagine where soldiers of two countries or maybe two communities are fighting with each other just because they are instigated to fight without knowing the usefulness or the real purpose behind indulging into the fight. So it is all in vain. All the efforts are going to be in vain. This particular idea is Matthew Arnold's assessment of the morally corrupted modern world full of vanity. The last sentence sums it up all. Morally corrupted modern world which is full of vanity. Vanity is beauty on the outer surface. So he relates modern world as something which is beautiful on the surface, something which is colorful on the surface, but from inside it is morally, ethically corrupted, and it is hollow from the inside because it does not have any belief in faith may be different faiths, faith in God, faith in religion, faith in the spirit, faith in spirituality, etc., etc. So this is what Matthew Arnold explains us in the poem. The poem has used different symbols, and it symbolizes each symbol has something or the other to depict. The sea depicts faiths, the sea of faith which is receding. There is a tide, but there is ebb also in the faiths. The land depicts English cliffs, that is solidity and greatness. Darkling plain, ignorant armies. The land describes two contradictory images: the solid English cliffs and ignorant armies who are fighting without any purpose. The shore is a place of conflict. The shore is the thin line which divides the sea and the shore, a place of conflict, human misery, humankind's loss of faith, and eternal sadness. So the shore depicts all of this. Light and dark, that is bright light of moon, and the darkness depicts the gone faith, the faith which is diminishing slowly because of the onset of modernization. These are the different themes, major themes that emerge during the analysis of the poem. There are two contradictions: man and the natural world, sadness, suffering, spirituality. So the backdrop of the poem is very beautiful Dower Beach, the scene of night, joy, but it depicts totally different thing, that it brings sadness and suffering and religious uncertainty, consolations of love. He asks his beloved to be faithful because he no more sees faith anywhere around. We can say that this poem is a bit of anti-modernization. It doesn't welcome modernization with open with both the arms. It depicts the loopholes of modernization as well. And it comments on life in general, consciousness and existence, meaning of lives, etc. So these are the major themes of the poem. Scansion in brief. As you know, the poem consists of 4 stanzas. The first stanza is 14 lines, second is 6 lines, and the third is 8 lines, and the fourth one is 9 lines. The meter is used, it is iambic pentameter and iambic dimeter. So no other meters are used but iambic. Rhyme is irregular, it doesn't follow a regular pattern from one stanza to the next. This is scansion. Now summing up, or we can say conclusion in brief, Dowabich expresses a crisis of faith, with the speaker acknowledging the diminished standing of Christianity or any other religion. Christianity because that was the major religion in that time and in that part of the land where Arnold wrote. So it is a crisis of faith. New research and intellectual inquiry, that is reason and rationality, cast doubt on humankind's central and special role in the universe. Central and special role in the universe, that is finding the meaning of your life, finding the purpose of your life, all this comes in religion and faith in religion, which is now this idea is becoming doubtful, is becoming dark because reason, research, intellectual query and modernization has replaced the faith. In its expression of alienation, doubt and melancholy, the poem is often interpreted as a remarkably forward-thinking precursor to 20th century crisis. Remember, Arnold wrote in 19th century, in early 19th century. So he, in a way, could foresee or predict the future, and then followed in the 20th century, followed the existential crisis and the absurdism, right? So this poem serves as a precursor, something which was depicted as early as in 19th century, that humankind will encounter existential crisis and absurdity in 20th century. So this is what the whole idea of the poem Dowabich, that Matthew Arnold conveys to the readers. Here are some of the basic questions which are based on the session itself, so it will be easier for you to answer. Write about Matthew Arnold's major works and their subject matter, the style of writing or the ideas which he dealt with. Critically analyze the poem Dowabich. Write about the symbolism of the poem and write about the major themes that the poem talks about. These are the questions, and here are the references for further reading, suggested reading of the poem. So thank you very much, friends. I hope now you have a little better idea of what Dowabich is all about, and you will be able to critically appreciate the poem. I would recommend you read the primary source, that is the poem itself, and take up suggested reading, further reading with the references available on internet, or you can go to your library, nearest library, and have a good read of Matthew Arnold's other works as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. See you until next time. Goodbye. Thank you.